The movie begins with a tape recording from April 13, 2008, where a dad named James is recording his daughter, June, whom her mom affectionately calls Junebug. While they're spending time together, June's mom, Grace Allen, walks into the room and takes the camera. While Grace is recording, something unusual happens. James' nose starts bleeding just as the video ends. Then, the scene shifts to someone editing the video, cutting it before the nosebleed, and saving it on their computer with the title, Last Family Trip? They put it in a folder for June. From what's shown on the screen, it seems like James, the father, may have passed away due to brain tumors. The mystery person then deletes a Google account, and we can hear goodbye messages from all the contacts. This person seems to be looking for a new place to live and is planning to move to Los Angeles. The screen switches to a crime scene with police and reporters, which turns out to be a series on Netflix. The year is now 2022, and June has grown up to be 18 years old. June finds herself bombarded with constant text messages from her friends, all asking for money to buy things. In the midst of this, her mother calls, and June gently chides her for relying on Siri for everything. A little background on Grace. She's been caring for June on her own since her husband, James, passed away, and she's recently started dating a man named Kevin Lynn. Grace and Kevin plan a week-long trip to Colombia, so Grace lays down some ground rules for June while she's away: no alcohol, no letting in strangers, and keeping her location turned on. She also mentions Heather, a lawyer who has a spare key to their house in case June needs anything. June is annoyed at the idea of being treated like a child but perks up when she hears about emergency money. June promptly hands $120 of her emergency money over to her friend Vina. Right then, Kevin Lynn, Grace's boyfriend, arrives expressing his love for June's mom, but before he can say much, Grace intervenes and asks him to book an Uber to the airport. Grace informs June that she needs to pick them up at the Los Angeles airport on Monday. June's facial expressions practically beg her mother to leave. Eventually, June's parents depart in the Uber, and Grace sends a heartfelt goodbye message to her daughter. Soon after, Vina texts June to let her know they're ready for the party at June's house. Kevin sends June pictures from the plane, making it clear that the messages are from her mom. One evening, Heather, Grace's lawyer, drops by with food for June and expresses some jealousy about Grace's happy relationship with Kevin. A montage follows, showing June partying and spending her emergency funds with friends, while her parents continue to send pictures from their trip to Colombia. June enjoys her time with her friends until the calendar reminds her that it's Father's Day. However, that doesn't stop her from drinking heavily at the party and eventually getting sick. Later that night, June finds herself alone in the dark, watching a video recording of her dad with the camera. She posts a picture of her dad on Instagram, expressing her longing for his presence. The next morning, June realizes that a week has passed. She must pick up her parents from the airport, and her house is a mess. She hires housekeeping services online and gets ready to collect her mom and Kevin. However, they don't show up, even after the last passenger leaves the airport. Worried, June tries to reach them through calls and messages, but there's no response. She eventually contacts the hotel in Colombia, but the staff only speaks Spanish. So, she uses Google Translate to communicate and requests access to the hotel's CCTV footage. She learns that her parents left behind all their belongings and that the video recordings are only available for 48 hours. Without enough money to go to Colombia herself, June reaches out to Heather for help, who promptly contacts the embassy in Colombia to assist in resolving the situation. The embassy sends a missing person report form, urging June to request an agent's assistance before the hotel footage vanishes. The FBI agent named Park informs her that they lack the authority to investigate in Colombia and need to collaborate with local authorities. With only 6 hours left to access the CCTV footage, Agent Park asks if she can provide access to her mother's email to trace her whereabouts. Unfortunately, June struggles to input the correct password for her mother's account. 4 hours pass, and her friend Vina suggests using live cams similar to those they've seen in a TV series they watched, but it doesn't yield any useful results. So, she turns to GoNinja, a service similar to TaskRabbit in the US, to hire a housekeeper in Colombia to go to the hotel and retrieve the footage. Javier, who also speaks English, is available to help. He hasn't seen his son in 3 years, so he can empathize with June's feelings. Javier agrees to assist, and June instructs him to check the hotel's CCTV footage. Soon, her friend Vina comes over, and they start searching for Kevin's Google password, thinking he might use the same password for all his accounts. With Vina's deep voice, they call the customer service line of the website Kevin used, providing all the necessary information for verification. This clever move grants June access to his Google account, and she starts tracking Kevin's phone. However, when she checks Kevin's journey history, there's no location history for the day before their flight back to LA. Javier calls with regretful news that the hotel's footage is already gone. However, the hotel cleaning lady witnessed 2 Americans leaving for a hardware store, leading June to suspect Kevin's involvement. June decides to track Kevin's credit card transactions, discovering 8 hardware stores in the last area where he used his card, which Javier must visit. Heather advises June to leave these matters to the police, but June persists. When she browses Kevin's email, she accidentally stumbles upon a picture of a woman. A few months ago, Kevin planned to meet a woman with the email address Bunny Cake. Curious, Vina suggests checking Kevin's blocked contacts, revealing several women's names. It becomes clear that Kevin used different names with different women, all of whom seemed to want their money back. Upon searching Kevin's fake names in Google, they find that Kevin was a convicted felon who served 3 years in prison before his release from federal custody last year. June is frustrated that Agent Park didn't inform her earlier, but he reminds her that she's illegally accessing Kevin's account, making the evidence inadmissible in court. She attempts to look up the account of the woman with the Bunny Cake email and finds her Instagram. After contacting her workplace, June learns that the woman hasn't shown up to work for 2 weeks. June checks Kevin's location history again, finding that he frequently visited Bunny Cake's workplace. Using one of his commonly visited places, June obtains Kevin's friend's phone number. She discovers that they were both ex-convicts, and Jimmy, the person who shares this information, met Kevin in a church. Additionally, Jimmy believes that Kevin has genuinely worked to leave his troubled past behind. Later, Javier calls June with an update. He managed to obtain a receipt for Kevin's recent purchase, which turned out to be a lock. That's all the information he could find, so June expresses her gratitude for his valuable help. Continuing her search online, June becomes determined to uncover how Kevin and her mother first crossed paths. To her surprise, she discovers an email that leads her to the initial conversation between her mother and Kevin on a dating app. Their conversation reveals a deep bond and a genuine relationship between them. Past messages also disclose that her mother knew about Kevin's past, and he was sincerely in love with Grace Allen. However, there's something more significant than finding her mother: understanding her past. June uses information from her mother's profile to search for a romantic tourist spot close to the lock shop, and she finds a place called the Walled City Love Lock Bridge. It all starts making sense, and she asks Javier to locate the lock with their initials. Indeed, Kevin, Lynn, and Grace's names are padlocked there. She uses live cameras to locate Kevin and her mother, checking the previous footage. As she watches the live feed, she witnesses Kevin proposing to her mother with an engagement ring. Suddenly, June receives a recording from Agent Park showing a video of the kidnapping of Kevin and his mother following the romantic proposal. Agent Park also uncovers a money transfer from Grace's account to an encrypted third-party account. This news devastates June as she realizes the loss of her mother without the chance to say goodbye. She decides to review the messages Kevin sent once more. This time, she notices that one of the pictures of her mother was a live photo, and something feels off, as she can't see her mother's face in any of the pictures. Upon clicking the live picture, she realizes that the woman in the image was not her mother at all. It turns out that the person in Colombia with Kevin was none other than Bunny Cake. Subsequently, the FBI holds a press conference, revealing that Grace Allen is still in Los Angeles. It turns out that Grace had fallen victim to Kevin's scheme, and the FBI discovers that Bunny Cake is actually named Rachel Page. Kevin had hired a woman who resembled Grace to impersonate her, as the real Grace had been kidnapped en route to the Los Angeles airport. Even the Uber driver was suspected of being hired by Kevin, as there was no record of the trip in Uber's records. In Colombia, the FBI finds a group of students who explain that Kevin paid them to stage the kidnapping. Rachel Page is later arrested, but she claims that she was paid as an actress by Kevin to dress and act like Grace Allen. Kevin had convinced her that it was all part of a reality TV show. Agent Park then asks June if her mother had used any other names, but June insists that her mom went by Grace Allen only. In a surprising twist, the news reveals that Grace Allen is just one of the aliases of the mysterious woman, whose true identity is sealed by a court order. This means that Grace Allen is not her mother's real name. Heather, who is June's mother's lawyer, agrees with June when she says that her mother never disclosed this information. The FBI clarifies that Allen is not a suspect at the moment. Still, many people in the community wonder if Grace was involved with Kevin, perhaps to facilitate her disappearance and start a new life somewhere. The internet goes wild as this revelation becomes headline news online, causing immense stress for June, who struggles to accept the community's theories. She decides to dig into Kevin's internet history and stumbles upon an encrypted messaging app called Guys. To her surprise, she accesses Kevin's chat from about 10 hours ago and decides to pose as Kevin to discover the user's identity. After obtaining the user's phone number, June traces it to Heather's office. She decides to visit Heather's office while recording everything using her smartwatch. Inside the office, she finds deleted files and a threatening note in a photo. June also discovers Heather's necklace scattered on the floor and eventually uncovers Heather's lifeless body in the office storage room. Later, Agent Park suspects that Heather knew something Kevin wanted to keep hidden. The bizarre part is that Kevin is still in Colombia, so the question remains, who committed this act? A video sent to June helps the FBI locate Kevin's hiding place, leading to a confrontation where Kevin is shot dead while attempting to escape. Feeling stuck, June begins listening to her mother's old voicemails, recalling her childhood nickname, Junebug. She tries to log in using the word, Junebug, as a password and successfully gains access to her mother's Gmail account. She checks her mother's last location, which was lost near the Los Angeles airport, and discovers a blocked email that reads, "She deserves to know." June decides to search for the person who sent the text in Kevin's email, leading her to security cameras that Kevin had bought for the blocked email user. She logs into the CCTV with Kevin's email and a new password, finding that the cameras are installed at an abandoned house. To her surprise, the house turns out to be her old vacation home, with recognizable interior spaces. Shortly after, Jimmy, Kevin's friend from the church, contacts her with information about Grace. June is alarmed when Jimmy unexpectedly shows up at her house. When she realizes he was an ex-convict, her fear turns into astonishment as he removes his head covering, revealing himself as her father, James. June can hardly believe that the man she believed had died 12 years ago stands before her. James explains that her mother is not Grace Allen but Sarah. He describes a turbulent past with Grace and how she took June away from him, falsely putting him in jail for 12 years. James keeps repeating that Grace wants to keep June away from him and admits to meeting Kevin in prison. June begins to suspect that James had everything planned before Kevin met Grace, believing he wants to reclaim her and that he's lying about her mom. Terrified, June tries to answer Vina's incoming call for help, but her father abducts her and locks her in the trunk of his car. Later, a video from 2008 shows June playing with her father, but it reveals his emotional instability as he scolds her mother. It also uncovers that James was a domestic abuser and a drug user who posed a danger to them. A heated argument ensues between Sarah and James over the phone, leading Sarah to report James to the police. James threatens that he will find Grace. To protect June, Sarah goes through a process of severing ties with her past, changing her identity to Grace Allen, and dissociating from all family members. This transformation is suggested by her lawyer, Heather. It's revealed that Grace edited the video at the beginning of the film to remove the part about James assaulting her. Back in the present, James brings June to a secluded house, forcefully ties her to a chair, and locks Sarah in a shed. He intends to kill Sarah for keeping June away for 12 years, but Sarah manages to escape. She knocks James unconscious and locks him in the shed. James shoots Sarah, and as June tries to escape, Grace stabs James with a shard. But James manages to leave the room and lock them in. James starts digging a grave for Sarah while June panics. She realizes a camera in the room and uses her smartwatch to reach out to Javier for help. The line drops, and James returns, demanding her watch. To protect her daughter, Sarah stands between them, and James shoots her. June tries to escape, but her father tackles her. Before things escalate further, Grace stabs James in the neck. He manages to leave the room, locking both June and her severely injured mother inside. James seeks the nearest hospital, but falls to his death. June rushes to her dying mother, apologizing for everything. She remembers telling her mother to stop using Siri for everything, leading her to her smartphone in front of the computer. June uses the CCTV cameras to instruct Siri to call the police. A SWAT team arrives at the house and rescues them. The story of Grace Allen's abduction becomes an episode in a Netflix series. Months later, Grace survives her gunshot wound, and June is in college. The daughter cherishes her time with her mother more, feeling remorseful for how she used to treat her. Grace forms a friendship with Javier after being introduced by June, and the film concludes.